Hi readers! Today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite mothers in fantasy and science fiction books. When I started putting this list together, it was actually a little bit difficult because apparently most mothers in sci-fi fantasy stories tend to either be dead or evil. But that's okay. I found 10 that I could use, and of course these are just my opinion, so it's totally biased. 100% biased and only based on stuff that I've personally read. I know there are some other ones out there that would probably be on others' lists, but if I haven't read it, it's not on my list. Before we jump in, my name's Chris. I do book reviews and all sorts of bookish videos. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel, and let's jump in with number 10, which is going to be Nicolette Pelletier from Nightplay. If you are not familiar with Sherrilynkennon's Dark Hunter series of books, they're basically like an urban fantasy romance. So they are adult, they're fantasy, and they are steamy. So without getting into the particulars, Nicolette, or Mama Lo, as she's called in the books, she has a very, very small role in this book, but I think that she does a lot with it. So she runs a bar in New Orleans called Sanctuary, and her bar is literally a sanctuary for any type of were-beast. So she, Nicolette, is a were-bear, like she turns into a bear, and other people that turn into other animals go to her club to get safe haven, Sanctuary. Once she takes someone in, she is the embodiment of a mama bear. She will fight tooth and nail to defend whoever is in her den. It doesn't matter who you are, where you came from. Once you're part of her crew, that is it. She will protect you to the death. So, like I said, a small role in this book, in this story, but an important one. I think that she embodies everything that you would want a good mother to be, because not only is she a mother, like she does have her own sons, but she also mothers other people as well, and you can't ask for more than that. But again, because it's such a small role in this overall story, doesn't really have anything to do with her, that's why she's only number 10. Number 9 is going to be Lady Catelyn Stark from Game of Thrones, a Song of Ice and Fire series. Of course, Mama Stark is, when it comes to her children, she is a bit of a mama bear herself. If you're not familiar with the story or you haven't seen the show, you may not know what I'm talking about, but she fought off, when one of her sons was ill, Bran, she fought off an attacker with like nothing but a dagger. So when it comes to protecting her children, she is quite fierce. It's hard to talk about some other things that she's done without talking about spoilers, but let's just say that anyone that harms her children, she is not going to let that fly. She's going to get revenge somehow, some way. Now, again, she is lower on this list because there is one glaring problem with Mama Stark, and that is the way that she treats Jon Snow. Because she did not give birth to Jon Snow, she does not treat him as kindly as she does the rest of her children, and that is why she is lower on the list. And I actually did think about adding Cersei on this list as well, because if there's one thing, the only thing that is in her favor, it's that I do believe that she loved her children, but at the end of the day, she's just too crazy, so I didn't include her, and that's why I picked Lady Stark instead. Number 8 is going to be Natalie Pryor from the Divergent series. So Natalie is the mother of the main character, Tris Pryor. And again, she does not have the biggest role throughout the series, but I do think that she has an important one. She is a loving mother to Tris, and, Tris goes through a lot of questioning herself throughout these books and where she really belongs. If you're not familiar with Divergent, basically their society is divided up into different factions, and she's not really sure what faction she truly belongs in. And it turns out her mother, she ends up joining this faction called Dauntless. They're supposed to be these like super brave and, you know, like these daredevil type people. And it turns out her mother actually used to be one of them. And, you know, whenever Triss is questioning her choices and questioning her decisions, her mother is always there to support her. Again, a small role, but an important role. And then also later in the books, when things start to go like really crazy, Natalie Pryor does step up and really try to help steer things in the right direction. So that is why Natalie Pryor is number 8 on my list. Again, I guess I should mention, I couldn't really find anything really wrong with her character, other than obviously her role is a little bit small. Not as small as Nicolette Pelletier, my number 10 pick, but still a little bit small in the overall Divergent series. Number 7 is going to be Lady Jessica from Dune. Dun, 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 dun. Again, this is another character where it's hard to talk about her without giving away spoilers if you're not familiar with Dune, but long story short, Lady Jessica belongs to a society of women, a cult, whose ultimate goal is to breed a superhuman, a messiah type character. Now, Lady Jessica's role, her task, the job that she was assigned was to seduce this Duke Leto, and provide him with a daughter. And then that daughter they were going to use to breed with someone else's kid and blah, 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 blah. It's a whole breeding type program. But Lady Jessica falls in love with Duke Leto. She was not supposed to fall in love with him. She was supposed to seduce him. He kind of ends up seducing her. She falls in love with him. So when Leto wants a son, she decides to go against her Bene Gesserit cult and give him a son. Long story short, shortened down version. So anyway, so she has this son, Paul, and it starts to become apparent that Paul is special, that Paul may be this messiah that they've been looking for, even though he didn't come about in the way that they thought. So throughout the Dune story, and a little bit of the rest of the series too, Lady Jessica does not always, I would say, make like the best decisions, because she is constantly trying to balance her responsibilities as a Bene Gesserit woman, as a woman in this clan that she's a part of, and trying to protect her son, Paul, because she knows that Paul is special. Paul has this destiny. He's going to be someone, and yeah. And then she also ends up having a second child, Alia, whose story is way too crazy to get into now, but simple, again, version is that when Alia is born, she's an abomination. There are things that are not right with her, and a normal person probably would have cast her aside, maybe even killed her, but Jessica does not, because she's her daughter, and she's gonna love her anyway. So that is why Lady Jessica was number 7 on my list. Number 6 on my list of mothers is going to be, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but Yasbau de Clermont from A Discovery of Witches. Now, she is a vampire, and she is the vampire mother of one of our main characters, Matthew de Clermont. Now, when I say vampire mother, I mean that Matthew was turned into a vampire by a man named, I believe it was Philip. It's been a while since I've read the series. And Yasbau was Philip's wife. So Philip is Matthew's vampire father. She is his vampire mother. So even though she did not physically give birth to Matthew as a human, in Matthew's second life as a vampire, he is her child. Again, she is the very definition of a fierce mother. So instead of a mother bear, we have a vampire mother here. Everything that she does, says, even the things that may at times seem cruel, is all in the interest of protecting Matthew. That's kind of her only flaw, is she does come across as very overbearing sometimes. when Matthew first brings his new witch girlfriend, Diana, back to meet the family, she is none too pleased about it. But, I mean, you can't really blame her, but at the same time, she is really mean to Diana. But at the end of the day, she does come around, she does stand up for them, she always stands up for Matthew. Matthew is like her number one priority, and that is why Yasbao made it to number 6 on my list. Plus, I mean, Vampire Mother, that's kind of cool, right? Kind of cool. Number 5 is going to be a little bit of a combination here, but mostly it is Phaedra no Delany, I think there's more to her name there, from the kushielsscion / kushielssdart series. Really quick, kushielsscion is the first book in what is known as the Imreal Trilogy. Now, there was a series of books that happened before this, so without giving anything away, this series focuses on a young boy named Imreal. And Imreal is the son of someone who is very much, we'll call it a villain character. Someone who's very morally gray. And through a whole series of events that happens in the previous books, Imreal ends up being adopted by Phaedra. So Phaedra is his adopted mother. I hope that made sense. And if there's one thing I can say about Phaedra, first of all, she's a great character. She would literally do anything for the people that she cares about in her life. Just to give you a quick example, in the previous series of books, when Imreal was kidnapped, she basically had to allow herself to be captured and tortured, like sexually tortured by this like evil warlord in order to save him. Imreal went through a lot as a kid. He, like I said, he was kidnapped, he was sold into slavery, his actual birth mother is like the most wanted person in the whole world. Like, he's kind of messed up, but because Phaedra is so loving, and also his adopted father, Jocelyn, who, you know, I'm totally talking about mothers here, but I do want to mention that he helped as well. Anywho, Phaedra, she's so kind, and she does such a good job of raising Imreal in a way that Imreal can love her as a mother, as his adopted mother, and still have room in his heart to love his actual mother. Because at the end of the day, no matter what his birth mother has done, she still is his birth mother, and Phaedra, I think, does a really good job of not letting him forget that, despite like all the horrible things that she's done. So I kind of think of it in like a real, if this was taking place in like a real life situation, like you hear so many stories about, you know, a new mother comes in and the old mother obviously made some mistakes and did some wrongs, and you could have every right to, like, you know, bash that person and put them down, but choosing not to do that, I think says something really special about those type of people in general, and especially Phaedra as an adopted mother. So that is why she is so high on my list. Now we're getting up to my top 3, which again, very hard to narrow it down or put these in the order that I wanted them to be in. But number 3 is going to be Sally Jackson from the Percy Jackson series. Now, Sally Jackson is, so if you don't know anything about the Percy Jackson series, basically Percy is a young boy and he is half human, half god, because his mother had a quick love affair with Poseidon. So he's half human, half Poseidon. So his human mother is Sally. Now, long story short, she raised Percy to be a good kid, blah, 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 blah. She has all the qualities that a good mother should have. The reason that she is so high on my list is because she, after, her affair with Poseidon, she has had a couple other human husbands, human lovers, And there's one in particular who we find out in the series is very abusive to her, like physically abusive to her. And when Percy finds out about it, he wants to obviously save his mother from what is going on, but his mother refuses to allow him to save her. So her number one priority, she tells him that she will save herself and that he needs to go and do the stuff that he needs to do. So basically, she is willing to be physically abused so that her son can succeed. Now, one could argue, if you want to argue about it, that maybe she wouldn't have put herself in that situation. But, I mean, let's face it, life is complicated. People are complicated. So that is why she's not like higher on my list. But I think, anyone that suffers so that someone else can prosper, I think that deserves a little bit of recognition. So that's why Sally Jackson made it to number 3 on my list. Number 2 is going to be Lana from the Saga graphic novel. If you've not read Saga, it's basically a story of, we have these 2 different races of beings. We have hornies, and we've got the winged people, and their 2 people have been at war for like ever, hundreds of thousands of years. So these 2 were soldiers on opposite sides, but somehow they met each other, fell in love, ended up having a child. And now they are on the run from both sides because that child is not supposed to exist. And neither side can have proof that, they could possibly work together, understand each other, even love each other. Now, there's things about Saga that I don't always like, but one of the things that I do like is Lana. I think that she is just a great character overall, but a fantastic mother. Again, just like some of the things I've said about some of the other ones, she is very much, the protective, mama bear type person. And considering what they have to go through, they're literally on the run from pretty much everyone in the universe. On the run from soldiers, bounty hunters, royalty on both sides. The list is never ending. But through it all, she never gets, discouraged, and she always does whatever she thinks they need to do to protect her daughter, Hazel. So that is why Lana is number 2 on my list. Again, I can't find anything really bad with her character. I would just say the story overall is a little bit much sometimes, but that doesn't matter. Lana, she's great. She's awesome. I love her. And yeah, that is why she's number 2 on my list. And finally, we come to number 1 mother in science fiction and fantasy. And yes, this is probably not going to be a big surprise to anyone, but I couldn't lie and pretend that I didn't feel this way. And that is going to be Molly Weasley from Harry Potter. Yes, Mama Molly, Mama Weasley. And not just because of the way that she fought Bellatrix Lestrange at the end, although I will mention that in a minute. Molly Weasley has a lot of kids. I think there's 7 Weasley children, and she somehow manages to keep track of all of them. Even though their house may be a little messy, let's face it, if you have that many kids, your house is going to be a mess. And then when Harry comes into the picture, when Ron brings Harry home from school, she immediately pretty much makes him one of her children, especially knowing that Harry doesn't have a mother, doesn't have a loving family at home. She immediately becomes a mother to him, becomes his loving mother. And she does that for all of her children, even the ones that mess up, even the ones that cause mischief. She loves all of her children equally, and she does her best to show that. And then, of course, like I said, she has that famous line during the big Battle of Hogwarts at the end of the book where she's fighting Bellatrix Lestrange, and she has all these sons, 1 daughter, and she says, not my daughter, you bitch. It's one of the best lines ever, and it just takes Molly Weasley from being this, little cardigan sweater mom type character to, a real badass. We always knew she was a badass, but in that moment, you really, really see it, and it's just iconic to me anyway. So that is why despite all the other ones, Molly Weasley is still my #1 favorite fantasy/sci-fi book mom. I hope you enjoyed my list. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments section below who your favorite book moms are, and happy Mother's Day, everyone.